All right, in this matchup here, we got Josh Quinlan taking on Danny Barlow. Quinlan, he's coming off the first loss of his career where he had his second UFC fight. He fought Trey Waters and just had a bad night. He couldn't figure out how to close the distance on the longer guy and just kind of got beat up for 3 rounds. Before that, he had been undefeated with some highlight reel knockouts, so he was a pretty big prospect, and he was actually a big favorite in that fight against Waters, and I bet on Waters, so that was one of the better bets that we had last year. I was pretty confident, and then Waters went in there and dominated the fight. But in this one, he's taken on a guy making his UFC debut off the Contender Series in Danny Barlow. And Danny Barlow is undefeated at 7-0, so he's in the same position that Quinlan was in his last fight, where he still has a 0 on his record. And he got that quick first-round knockout in the Contender Series and had some fights against okay fighters, but both of these guys really haven't fought top-level competition, so this is a good matchup because they're both not super experienced. They don't have a ton of high-level fights, and I think that it should be a good fight for both guys. So you look at how they match up. It's a similar matchup for Quinlan to his last fight where he's getting a really long, lanky striker, so he's going to have to do a much better job of closing the distance than he did against Trey Waters. We got Barlow with an 80-inch reach, which I believe is going to be the longest reach at 170 in the UFC. And if Barlow wins this fight, it's just going to be off him being sharp. I think if he stays sharp and stays technical, he's going to get the job done. You look at Josh Quinlan, he's kind of an exploder, spark plug type of guy that has some quick knockouts against low-level competition, but I feel like his striking is a little overrated because he doesn't use a lot of feints or fakes to close the distance, is pretty methodical, and really just relies on his athleticism and explosiveness to close the gap when he does go first, and that's why he gets caught a lot coming in against more skilled strikers like we saw with Trey Waters. And all he really has on the outside is leg kicks, which they could be a factor in this fight. Barlow is kind of heavy on his lead leg, but he could switch stances, Barlow, and he checks kicks fairly well. So I think that he'll be able to mitigate a lot of the leg kicks damage that Quinlan potentially could do. And Quinlan mainly likes to counterpunch, so that's why Barlow has to stay sharp and stay long. If Barlow can keep the jab in Quinlan's face, keep that straight left hand, which that's why his nickname is Left-Handed God. I mean, his straight left hand is really nice, really clean, southpaw with length, so that's always tricky. And if he could just stay long, stay sharp, he has the speed, he has the technicality to keep Quinlan on the end of his punches and potentially really land some big shots and get Quinlan out of there, who's not really defensively sound and makes mistakes. But with Quinlan, what we do have is a super strong guy that comes in great shape. So Barlow has to be able to push for 3 rounds if he can't get Quinlan out of there in the first. I think that's going to be a factor. If Quinlan can make it out of the first and really try to keep pushing the pace and doesn't take too much damage, maybe he could start to wear on Barlow going into the 3rd round. But in terms of wrestling or grappling, I don't really see too much of that in this fight. I think Quinlan is the one that would potentially try to wrestle here, but he doesn't have great wrestling, and Barlow is not going to attempt takedowns or anything like that. If they do go to the ground, I think that Quinlan will probably have a slight advantage. Quinlan looks like even when you take him down, because he usually doesn't take people down, or when he drops you, he's good on top. He's heavy and he has good control. He could get the back and get rear naked chokes. And when you take him down, he's hard to control. He's very strong. Like, he could stand up from under guys. And definitely if he can get on top, potentially he could do damage. But I just don't think he's going to be able to get the takedowns. I don't know if he's going to be able to land clean enough to drop Barlow, who's never been hurt in a fight or really dropped and knocked out or anything like that. So he has a good chin. So I don't know if that's really going to come into play. And Barlow, off of his back, isn't a 0. I watched a few of his fights, and he isn't a great grappler, but he knows what he's doing enough. He stays composed, and he can re-guard and eventually get back up to his feet. So even if Quinlan does take him down, I don't think he's going to instantly finish him or anything like that. And so personally, I just feel like Danny Barlow is going to be able to get the job done. I just don't think he's going to be lazy in there. I think he's going to be sharp, technical. I think Quinlan just doesn't have a lot of avenues to win outside of knocking out Barlow in the first round, or Barlow completely gasses out and gets finished late. And I don't think those two scenarios are that likely. So ultimately, I think Barlow's going to win. And I actually feel like Barlow has a decent chance to get the knockout. I mean, you look at Josh Quinlan's last fight with Trey Waters, he did survive 3 rounds with Waters, but he took a lot of damage. And I personally feel like Barlow is a little bit more of a dynamic and dangerous striker than Trey Waters in terms of being able to land a one-shot knockout. So I don't necessarily know what the odds are going to come out to on that, but that's potentially a bet that I would look at, Danny Barlow by KO. And for the official pick, I'm going to say Barlow wins via second-round knockout.